Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is Lindsay Tedds with the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary. Thanks for joining us today, Lindsay.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, the school put out a report today on gender disparities in the labor market in Alberta. Can you talk a little bit about what the report found when it came to the impact of the pandemic on the province and on workers, especially workers, young children?
Yeah, this was an interesting one for me. I'm a parent, and it was in the fall as people were coming out to say, and particularly several of our ministers came out and said, the labor market's recovered, everything is fine. Well, things were not fine for me. I had a kid at home. Like, we ended up isolating more than 7 times over the school year because of exposure to COVID, and balancing online school while working and teaching. I was teaching at the time as well. It was very, very stressful. And while I wanted to throw in the towel, I didn't, but I did have a number of professional mom friends who did. It was just too much to take on. And so, as I see people talking about the fact the labor market is fine, and yet I'm seeing all around me it's not fine, the researcher, go, well, what does the data say? And so I teamed up with 2 emerging scholars, one at the University of Toronto, one at the University of Waterloo, and we went into the labor force survey. And we were interested in first finding out whether or not the gender differential that we saw in the first wave of the pandemic carried on. And then I was particularly interested in picking away at what did it look like for parents. And it was there that we found an ongoing huge impact of the COVID-19 waves. Every wave that hits, you can see it show up in the labor market statistics for parents. And this is parents of children under the age of 13, because these are the kids that need a lot more attention from their parents. And then the result is just magnified if parents have a kid under the age of 6 at home. The employment is down, hours of work is down, and only now in the 3rd wave, which we report in an addendum to the paper, are we actually seeing the labor force participation of women with young children dropping. And so it's this long sustained impact that we're now seeing the real detrimental effects, which is severing from the labor force. And it's very problematic.
So what, is there a reversal that can take place, or we just hit this path and we're going down in that direction, and we can't reverse it now because of what's happened in the past year and a bit?
I would hope we can reverse it. I'm an economist, so our economic recovery is vital to understanding this impact on parents and understanding what we can do better to make sure that they are able to continue on in their labor. Because when we're talking about this being labor force, this isn't just workers. This is also self-employed. This is business owners as well, right? So you have to think about this. This is our economy. And I think, as everybody knows, in Alberta, families are larger and workers are younger. So the longer we have these impacts, and the more this results in people pulling out of the labor market, we then have what's called labor market scarring. And that means the longer it goes on and the more of an impact, the harder it is to for an individual to recover this, to want to come back into the labor market, to be able to find employment in this labor market. And again, our economic recovery is dependent on this. And so we need to make sure we focus in on supporting parents, that there is no separation of the economy, the labor market, and education and childcare. They are intertwined and interrelated, and you can't have an economic recovery without supporting parents in their need for early childhood education and childcare.
So what does the report offer recommendations of what should be done right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's short term, we have to think both short term and long term. I mean, short term, we have to absolutely do everything we can to keep schools open. We keep schools open by making sure community spread is under control. And that did not happen in the first wave, second wave, or third wave, right? They were all launched with community spread that got out of control very quickly. That brings it into the schools. And then the schools can't keep operating, whether or not it's the classes shutting down or the schools or the whole school board. And as soon as those classes shut down, parents are now home with their kids doing that online. I've become quite an expert in grade 2 curriculum myself, which is not hard, but it can be hard to have somebody that I have my son to sit down and actually do it. And so it's just a distraction from the work. And I might be a professor, but I'm not a grade 2 teacher. My skills are not properly aligned for an efficient outcome in this area. So we really just absolutely have to make sure that we keep schools open safely. Then we have to think about, no matter what, we are going to be seeing parents having to reduce their hours. And we need to support them being able to do that. And that's the federal government has the Canada Recovery benefit that people can apply for, but it's only $500 a week. And lots of people are giving up much more income than that benefit gives. And Alberta should be thinking about a top up to make sure that families stay whole through this crisis. And then long term is that we now should understand that we don't have a strong economy without strong education, early childhood education, and childcare. And this goes all the way from 0 up to, it does go up to grade 12 and onwards, but particularly for the K through 7 group, is that that high quality education that ensures that kids get high quality education from teachers and not necessarily their parents, and that enables them to use their skills in the economy, which helps us all. Yeah. So we need to embrace the federal plan of a universal Canada-wide system of early childhood education.
One of the things that I find interesting, right? Obviously, during the pandemic, many more people working from home, flexible working, and that was a trend prior to the pandemic, but obviously more so now. As we move forward, and when you look at all these issues of parents dealing with kids and on the home front, etc. Do you think that trend of remote work is going to be more embraced as we move forward?
Well, obviously, for certain classes of workers, it's possible. So for somebody like myself, who's a university professor, when I'm not teaching, what is the value of being at work, and to what extent does it add stresses, and what does it add for our benefits? I think that we have learned that providing flexibility for people, particularly parents, is quite important. And I think the more that we push a return to the pre-pandemic ways, the before times, whatever we're going to start calling this, right? We need a fundamental check on to what extent did what we had before, was it working, and are there better ways? And I think you will find that a lot of parents, some want to go back because they just want to get out of the house. But others find a better balance so that, they can run their kids to school, get home, get to work without also having to commute downtown and all of these sorts of things. There are better ways that we can structure our workplaces to support people so that they are more productive, more efficient, more effective when they are at work.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks very much, Lindsay, for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Great. That was Lindsay Tedds, who is with the School of Public Policy at the University of Calgary. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.